Shy waitress discards stereotypes, discovers the hidden heart of a revealed French billionaire. Molly stood at the counter, her apron tied tight around her waist like armor, staring out at the clattering plates and the familiar faces of the diner with a heart that battled to break free. At just 24, life had already carved deep lines of responsibility on her brow. Her single mother depended on her, while her younger brother relied on her for everything. This wasn't what she dreamed of, penning stories that captured the raw and beautiful complexities of life, weaving in moments of love, loss, and resilience. Yet here she stood, pouring coffee for elderly men who teased her about her lack of ambition. Do they see her as a failure? The thought twisted in her mind as she swept a strand of hair behind her ear, trying to mask the heat of embarrassment with a steady smile. Every pout of disappointment from family members cut deeper than the last, their silent judgment echoing the societal view that her job was a trap. Poverty defined these four walls. But if only they knew the fire inside, the unyielding spirit calling for more. The diner was a sanctuary of sorts. Regulars clung to her, offering moments of connection amidst the humdrum. Yet, each spoon clink, every soft laugh, felt like a taunt against her aspirations. Was she meant to stay here forever, trapped in a cycle of generosity and expectation? Then, on an ordinary Tuesday, everything flipped. A strikingly handsome man with a French accent sauntered into the diner, and the world dulled around him. Henri was a puzzle piece cut from a world of glimmering wealth, a billionaire who seemed untouchable yet wanted more from life. As she took his order, a nervous tremor tingled through her fingers. Their conversation began charmed with small talk but quickly spiraled into an exchange of truths, he, feeling like an outsider among the elite, and she, burdened by family's expectations. The dual thread of loneliness stitched their spirits together. Suddenly, her job didn't feel like a cage anymore. It was a bridge, a wild chance at something more profound than mere survival. But with every laugh shared, every moment treasured, the weight of her responsibilities loomed larger. Could she dare to step into his world of possibilities? What would her family think? The scrutiny, the whispers that followed their every move? The chaotic push-pull within her heart left Molly breathless, her mind racing with temptation. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as the laughter echoed between them, scandal erupted. Whispers of Henri's past had begun to swirl, filling the diner with murmurs of disdain. Could she defend him? What if those whispers painted him as unworthy? Molly's heart pounded with anguish. She stood on the edge of all she knew, grappling with the test of loyalty. Would she choose the judgment of others or the chance to embrace a love that transcended all boundaries? The timeless conundrum spread out before her. Would she stand up to protect the one who revealed her heart's yearning, or would she retreat back into the shadows of comfort, laden with doubts, where expectations awaited? The choice felt monumental, as she realized it might reshape everything she thought she knew about love, truth, and self-worth. Molly's heart thundered in her chest as she moved through the diner, each table a reminder of the whispers that nipped at her heels. The air was thick with judgment, and she could feel the weight of every sideways glance. Determination wrestled with doubt, and as she traded plates and refilled cups, she silently replayed her conversation with Henri, tracing the contours of his vulnerability like a roadmap to something new. It was thrilling, yet terrifying. Could she really step outside the boundaries of her mundane life? Each interaction with Henri had chipped away at the fear she had nearly resigned herself to. There was a spark between them, igniting a longing she never thought she could entertain. As she caught herself daydreaming, she wondered what if his world could become hers. But the chasm between their realities felt insurmountable. The diner was a breeding ground for judgments, and the familiar faces morphed into critics as soon as Henri's name crossed her lips. Billionaires don't care about girls like you, echoed through her mind like a taunt. There was a steely resolve nested in her instincts, and she yearned to confront the silence that lodged itself deep within her heart. After her shift, Molly leaned against the grimy wall outside the diner, exhaling the day's burden. With each breath, she reminded herself of Henri's words, how he, too, felt trapped in expectations. Suddenly leaning on the wall felt like leaning into a quiet determination. She wouldn't let the perceptions of others mold her destiny. The thought shattered the confines of her job, each second coiling tighter than the last. So, she took a deep breath and dialed Henri's number with an urgency that prompted an electric jolt through her veins. "Bonjour, Molly," he answered, warmth spilling from his voice. Hearing him ignited a rush of courage. "What's on your mind?" "I need to talk," she said, surprised by the firmness in her tone. The words melded with her resolve. It felt like stepping onto a dance floor cavernous with potential. "I'll be there," he replied without hesitation. As the evening wore on, anticipation twisted her stomach with a nervous thrill. She adorned herself with a simple but flattering dress, something symbolic of her desire to step into a new light. Each piece of jewelry felt like a talisman against the doubts that had wrapped around her for so long. The woman staring back at her was emerging from a chrysalis. When Henri arrived, he looked as effortlessly sophisticated as ever, and the way his eyes lit up at the sight of her caused the storm inside her to calm. They found a bench by the waterfront, the gentle slosh of the waves whispering secrets of adventure. Molly dug into her vulnerabilities. "Every time I think of you, I feel something more," she confessed, a tremor in her voice, feeling the freshness of honesty in the air between them. "But I worry about what others think, about where we both come from." Henri took a moment, gazing into her eyes with an intensity that made her heart flutter. "Let them talk," he replied. "They don't know who we truly are. What matters is what we choose for ourselves." His words imbued her with strength, and for the first time, she didn't fear judgment. Instead, she pondered the thrill of the unknown. Yet, behind that strength lingered a shadow of doubt, whispering that this could all unravel. What if the pressure of their disparate worlds became too great? What if she couldn't meet his expectations, or worse, if he couldn't reciprocate her vulnerability? And there it was, the looming question that sparked trepidation in her heart. Could she truly embrace this chance to rewrite her story, or would the weight of judgment drag her back into darkness? With her heart racing, a new realization dawned on her: she could either forge ahead or remain shackled by fear. But could she unveil her true self, diving deeper into this connection before it shattered under the weight of perceptions? The sun dipped below the horizon, and as stars blinked to life overhead, the moment crystallized in her mind. The future was a blank page, and she held the pen. But would she have the courage to write the next chapter? The next morning, Molly awakened to the soft light filtering through her curtains, casting a warm glow across her small bedroom. Yet there was an air of anxiety stirring in her chest, a residual echo from last night's revelation with Henri. Today would be a test not just of her commitment to him, but of her conviction in herself. As she prepared for work, each motion felt more deliberate. Even brushing her hair became an act of defiance against the self-doubt that clawed at the edges of her mind. She scrutinized her attire, a simple black uniform that felt increasingly like a costume designed to shield her from the world rather than reflect her true self. Resolutely, she tucked a loose strand behind her ear and decided it was time to layer her confidence with a splash of personality, hoping it would tether her to the vibrant woman she aimed to embody. At the diner, familiar faces greeted her with their usual indifference. She maneuvered through the tables, serving customers and dodging their critical gazes. Yet today, she felt invigorated. Every smile she offered was a shield, every laugh she exchanged a defiance against the whispers. She functioned in largely the same role, but internally, every mundane interaction transformed into a stepping stone toward a greater self. As the lunch rush waned, her mind drifted back to Henri, to the spark that ignited between them. That thought acted as both anchor and sail, it grounded her while simultaneously pushing her toward the horizon of potential. Was she merely basking in the glow of infatuation, or could there be real substance behind it? She worried about the connection they shared, the vulnerability he inspired within her. Her thoughts were interrupted when Jane, her co-worker, ambled over, a concerned frown creasing her brow. "Hey, you've seemed different lately. Everything okay?" Molly faltered, her initial instinct to shield her emotions kicking in, but as she met Jane's eyes, she felt an unexpected compulsion to respond honestly. "Actually, yeah. I met someone, and it's changed how I see things." "Someone rich?" Jane's tone pressed, laced with skepticism. "Yes," Molly admitted. "But I'm not sure that matters. I feel empowered, like I can chase something beyond this diner." The words rushed forth, startling even herself. Jane crossed her arms, studying her intently. "Just be careful. You know what they say. Rich men come with complications." Molly's heart sank at the bitterness slipping through Jane's words, but instead of retreating into doubt, she held her ground. "I'm willing to take that risk. More than the judgment others cast, I think it's time I decide who I want to be, not who others believe I should be." Jane's frown deepened, but there was a flicker of something akin to respect in her eyes. "Well, then good luck, girl. Just don't lose yourself in the process." Molly nodded, the weight of Jane's concern evident yet not oppressive. The exchange stoked her resolve, illuminating her choice to pursue authenticity rather than conform to the judgments of others. The shift came to an end, and as she stepped outside, the evening air enveloped her like an embrace. Henri texted, inviting her to meet him at a cozy wine bar on the outskirts of town. This spontaneous gathering held the promise of deeper understanding and connection. As she walked, a tingle of apprehension coursed through her veins. She would reveal bits of her true self to Henri, bits she had withheld that might reshape their fragile bond. Would he accept her imperfections? Would he embrace not just the glitz of her aspirations but also the rawness of her reality? Just before she reached the bar, Molly paused, her breath hitching as uncertainty flashed vividly in her mind. Would Henri, with his world of wealth and expectations, be prepared to see her? To truly know her? The door to the bar swung open, and she stepped inside, propelled by courage and curiosity. But was she ready to unmask herself completely, to strip away every layer of doubt? Could this ever-evolving connection withstand the clashing of their very different worlds? With her heart racing, she realized the time for hesitation had ended. Tonight, she would face her fears head-on. And as she took a seat, awaiting Henri's arrival, she prepared to confront the essence of who she was, knowing now that her journey of discovery had just begun. Molly sat alone at a small table adorned with a flickering candle, its delicate flame reflecting in the glint of her nervous eyes. The bar hummed with the soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of wine glasses, creating a cozy atmosphere that only heightened her anxiety. She traced her fingers along the rim of her glass and let a heavy sigh escape. It was time to exhale all her doubts. Henri had yet to arrive, and with every passing minute, anticipation twisted inside her, a blend of excitement and a gnawing fear. Would he see the real her? The waitress who served fries and coffee by day, yet yearned for more than just survival? Or would he only perceive the artifice of her chosen attire, the black uniform she wished to transform into a canvas of her personality? She was ready to abandon the quiet whispers of doubt that had plagued her for so long. Resilience tightened around her heart like a warm embrace. The moment their conversation started, she promised herself she would not shy away from sharing her ambitions, fears, and dreams, regardless of how starkly they contrasted with his opulent lifestyle. The soft chime of the doorbell pulled her from her thoughts. Henri swung through the entrance, looking effortlessly charming in a tailored navy blazer, his eyes scanning the room until they found hers. A smile broke upon his face, and in that instant, any residual apprehension seemed to dissolve away. "Sorry to keep you waiting," he said, sliding into the chair opposite her. "The traffic was horrific." His voice, rich with accent, carried warmth and sincerity. "It's okay," Molly replied, attempting to mask her trembling excitement with a casual demeanor. "I was just enjoying the ambience, you know." She gestured lightly, her heart pounding against her ribs. His gaze lingered on her, not with scrutiny but rather curiosity. "What do you really think of this place?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. It was an invitation for more than just pleasantries, it was an opening for deeper dialogue. With a deep breath, Molly seized the moment. "It feels real, I guess. It's not like the upscale places you're probably used to." Her voice steadied, and she continued, feeling the weight of her words strengthening her resolve. "I like how it feels alive, chaotic even. It's something I understand. The diner has a similar energy." Henri nodded, leaning in as if her words captivated him. "I appreciate that," he said, his interest palpable. "And you? Do you feel alive?" She hesitated, teetering on the precipice of vulnerability. This was the crux of her transformation. "I'm beginning to. I've always played it safe, satisfied with the familiar. But I want more. I want to explore my potential, chase after what makes me feel complete." Her candidness hung between them, a thread of connection that she felt pulling them closer. Yet there lingered a haunting question in her mind: would he see her aspirations as naive? Her determination to break the mold as frivolous? Henri's expression softened. "You have a fire in you, Molly. Not everyone recognizes it. I like that you're willing to step outside your comfort zone." Encouraged by his response, Molly ventured further. "I need to discard the stereotypes. This job is great, but it doesn't define who I am or who I want to be. I don't want to live in the shadow of what others expect." He exhaled slowly, a glimmer of admiration lurking in his eyes. "You're braver than many I've met, you know that? Most are too afraid to challenge their circumstances." An undeniable connection sparked between them. Just as she began to feel the warmth of acceptance, the stark reality of their divergent lives settled uncomfortably in her mind. Would pursuing this connection, intense as it felt, pull her away from her identity? Would she remain steadfast amidst the upheaval? Yet, in the face of uncertainty, she decided to navigate this labyrinth of emotion and ambition. She would not let fear dictate her course. Instead, she was committed to being authentic, to continuously rediscover herself even as she grew closer to Henri. As the evening unfolded, conversations shifted from mundane topics to deeper reflections on ambition, dreams, and the weight of expectations. Each laugh, each shared smile weakened the mental barriers she had built around her heart. But as the night wore on, a shadow of apprehension flitted through her mind. Somewhere within Henri, beneath the polished surface of wealth and opportunity, lay complexities she had yet to uncover. Would she be able to unravel that mystery? Molly leaned closer, heart thumping in rhythm with her growing desire to know Henri intimately. The stakes were higher than she'd anticipated, but she was no longer intimidated by the uniqueness of their connection. She would soon discover whether love and ambition could intertwine without losing herself in the process. The next chapter of her life awaited, and she was on the brink of unveiling its twists. But as they conversed, a text from Jane flashed on her phone, bearing a warning message that chilled her to the core: "Be careful. You don't know what you're getting into." Molly couldn't help but wonder, was she truly in over her head? Molly's fingers brushed against her phone, the warning from Jane echoing in her mind. "You don't know what you're getting into." The words clawed at her, wrapping around her confidence and threatening to pull her into self-doubt. Yet, as she sincerely gazed into Henri's eyes, she felt the warmth of his interest, the validation of her desires manifested in real time. "Everything all right?" Henri asked, a hint of concern in his tone. She collected herself, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just a moment of reflection," she replied, grateful for his attention but aware that the shadow of her fears loomed just beneath the surface. It was time to confront that shadow head-on. The conversation resumed its natural flow, but it was tinged with the buoyancy of possibilities. Henri spoke of his ventures in art and philanthropy, painting a vivid portrait of his world, a life adorned with elegance and influence. The more he unfolded layers of his existence, the more Molly realized how far apart their backgrounds were. "You know, I've always admired artists," she confessed, giving voice to the ideas that swirled within her. "There's something so freeing about expressing oneself through creation, rather than just focusing on the results." Henri paused, his gaze intensifying. "What would you create if you could? Without any limitations?" She hesitated, wrestling with the fear of a dream unfulfilled. This was her chance to articulate her ambitions, to translate raw passion into tangible goals. "I think I'd like to start a community art initiative," she said, the idea electric and inspiring. "Somewhere people could explore their talents, regardless of their background. Art has a way of breaking barriers." His eyes sparkled with intrigue. "That's a noble cause. Have you thought about how to get started?" For a moment, her mind raced ahead, imagining workshops, passionate artists gathered together, a symphony of creativity. Then reality tugged at her. "I don't really know. I have a job that occupies most of my time, and don't let that discourage you," Henri interjected gently. "Everyone starts somewhere. Just because you're working in a diner doesn't mean you should shelve your dreams. What if I could help you?" The offer lingered in the air, thick with implication. "Help? How?" "Let's brainstorm together. I have connections, and my experience might provide some insight. You could bring your vision to life with a little support." Listening to him, her heart surged. This was a turning point, an opportunity to carve a path she had only dared to dream of before. Yet it felt precarious. What would it mean to accept help and, far beyond that, assistance from someone so different? Would it dilute her authenticity or fortify it? "I really appreciate that," she said slowly. "But I don't want you to think I'm using you. I want it to spring from genuine passion, not entitlement." "That mentality is precisely what I admire about you," he reassured, resting his elbows on the table, heightening their connection. "Your passion is what fuels my interest, nothing else." His words resonated but also ignited a glimmer of fear. Aid could easily transform into dependence, altering her identity in subtle ways. Could she maintain her essence amidst the allure of his world? Each moment spent with him felt like walking on a tightrope, thrilling yet terrifying. Molly could feel her resolve hardening. She would take the leap. "Okay," she said, steeling herself. "Let's start brainstorming right now." She felt liberated as she surrendered to the exciting prospect of new possibilities. As they spent the hours diving deeply into creativity and visions of the future, their rapport deepened. For the first time, Molly felt like she was more than just a waitress, she was a dreamer. As they discussed art movements, potential locations, and initial plans, a flickering excitement ignited inside her. The conversation danced seamlessly, each exchange an affirmation of her aspirations. But just as optimism enveloped her, a familiar doubt gnawed at her core, and she could hear Jane's warning echo once more, "Don't get in too deep." Was she aware of the potential repercussions of crossing the boundaries of their separate worlds? As the discussion slowed and the clock ticked past midnight, Molly felt the atmosphere shift, a revealing moment hung in the air. "Molly," Henri interjected, his voice low and measured, "I have to ask, when you think about your future, do you see a place for someone like me?" The question hit her like a thunderclap, profound in its simplicity. Her heartbeat quickened as she weighed her response. The potential paths ahead seemed to stretch infinitely, each choice promising either personal growth or a surrender of her identity. Caught between excitement and a creeping sense of dread, she met his gaze, her mind racing. Either response teetered on the tip of her tongue, laden with uncertainty. How much of herself was she willing to risk? And would acceptance of this relationship jeopardize the very dreams she had begun to define? Molly realized that the heart of her journey had only just begun. With Henri's question looming unanswered, she faced the greatest tension of all: would she embrace the connection, or would therein lie the key to losing her identity in pursuit of her ambitions? As she wrestled with that decision, a second text arrived on her phone. "Are you sure this is right for you? Don't forget who you are." The pressure mounted as she searched for an answer, not only for Henri but for herself. What was she willing to sacrifice on the perilous journey to her true self? Molly's heart pounded against the confines of her chest as she sat before Henri, his question hanging like a pendulum, poised between promise and peril. The intricacies of her life had morphed into a tangled web of aspirations and fears. On one hand, Henri's world depicted boundless potential, a vibrant spectrum that called to some deep-seated yearning within her. But what if the pursuit of that potential came at the cost of losing herself? Her hesitation seemed weighted, thickening the air between them. She could sense Henri's expectancy, a blend of curiosity and concern softening his features. Yet beneath that warmth, doubts loomed, reminders of Jane's caution replayed in her mind. Don't forget who you are. What did that even mean in the context of this burgeoning relationship? Hadn't she always been defined by her surroundings, her responsibilities? It was easier to remain the reliable diner waitress than to step into a world where aspirations were draped in luxury. "It's not that simple," she finally uttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why not?" Henri's tone was steady, urging her to peel back layers of self-imposed limitations. "What are you afraid of? Losing your identity or failing to embrace your potential?" The fight within her intensified. She recognized she had always walked the safer path, a tightrope woven with fear of judgment and inadequacy. But fear was a cage, one she needed to dismantle if she ever truly wanted to soar. "I guess I'm scared that if I reach for something bigger, I might drop everything I have, or not be able to handle it." "Then let's make sure you don't." His assuredness enveloped her, slicing through her reservations. "You're not just some ordinary girl clinging to comfort. You have a vision, and it deserves to be realized. Let's create a plan, step by step. If you risk nothing, you gain nothing." She let his words resonate within her. Gaining something didn't mean losing herself, it meant refining and strengthening her identity. "Okay," Molly said, emboldened by the possibility before her. "Let's do this." As they delved into brainstorming, a newfound excitement sparked with every idea they exchanged. It transformed into a brainstorm infused with Henri's connections and her own raw creativity. They sketched out a blueprint of workshops and community events, each component meticulously crafted to break down barriers. Yet, as they began constructing this ambitious vision, the specter of her past loomed. The more they collaborated, the more she felt the dichotomy of her world and his weighing on her mind. Did her dreams belong in this realm of privilege? "Are you worried about what others might think?" Henri asked, his gaze piercing through her defensiveness. "I've grown up with some tough voices. People don't often expect much." His silence hovered for a moment, heavy yet contemplative. Slowly, his features softened again. "Don't allow their limitations to dictate your potential. You're already challenging their expectations just by exploring this path. That's where your power lies." His conviction lit a fire within her, challenging the beliefs she had internalized over the years. For the first time, Molly saw the possibility that she could craft her identity beyond the limitations of her past, not despite it but in conjunction with it. By seeing her dreams take shape, she could redefine who she was, an evolution guided by ambition and authenticity. In the weeks that followed, each brainstorming session thrummed with purpose. But with vision came complexity. Conversations slipped into uncomfortable territories, discussions that required her to confront what it meant to lean on someone else's resources without compromising her values. Every one of Henry's connections elevated ideas into plans, yet a tenuous thread held her back, the ghost of dependence. Her inner dialogue spiraled. Was she losing herself in the journey, trading parts of her for his approval? The push and pull between her long-standing beliefs and burgeoning ambitions weighed heavily on her mind. As a pivotal planning meeting approached, with potential benefactors, the dread of facing critics loomed. Would she step into this sphere advocating her vision with conviction, or would she reduce herself to a shadow of Henri, a mere projection of his influence? Perched at this precipice, Molly felt the firm grasp of her dreams battling against the apprehension that plagued her. What if she stumbled? The internal conflict reached a climax the night before the meeting, leaving her restless, pacing the floor of her tiny apartment, the worn wooden boards creaking underfoot. Amidst the self-doubt, her phone buzzed a message from Jane, "You have to face this, Mole, don't let anyone hold you back." As Molly sat at the edge of her bed, the weight of expectation pressing down on her, she realized this was not merely about facing critics but about affirming her own worth. The moment of truth was inching ever closer. Could she genuinely step into that space and advocate for herself? Or would she let fear dictate her path once more? With the air thick with anticipation, she took a deep breath, knowing the answer could redefine more than just her future, it could reshape her very identity. Molly stood in front of the mirror, examining her reflection. An outsider would see a worn waitress preparing for another long shift, yet she sensed beneath the surface something was shifting, swirling like the caffeine in the cup she often carried. The girl looking back at her wore layers of doubt and potential, her face teetering on the brink of transformation. As she adjusted her hair into a practical bun, her thoughts drifted to Henry's words. He had challenged her to unearth her worth, to confront the doubts that had governed her life for so long. Yet now, the approaching meeting filled her with a familiar dread that tangled with the exhilaration of possibility. What if she failed to convey her vision? The lions in the room, the affluent investors with their sleek suits and polished shoes, would they dismiss her before she even opened her mouth? Taking a deep breath, she moved to her desk, pulling out a notebook filled with her ideas, jotted dreams furiously scrawled during those sessions with Henri. They were no longer just dreams, they were a flourishing garden that required her nurturing to bloom. Each workshop she envisioned, each event that promised to bridge gaps, represented a piece of her battling to emerge into the light. Yet the specter of Henry's influence hovered at the edges. What if by leveraging his connections, she inadvertently dimmed her own light? Engaging with the confidence of someone raised in privilege felt like an invasive act, transforming her into a marionette crafted from his resources rather than a girl armed with her passions. Even in her anxiety, Molly confronted herself, the depth of her self-exploration leaving her shaken yet invigorated. She could feel layers of her past, like worn-out clothes, begin to shed as she donned an identity threaded with ambition. The clock ticked menacingly, and the meeting loomed closer. Each tick reminded her that there was a world beyond the diner, possibilities intertwined with risk. Would she step boldly into this new narrative, or linger in the background, afraid to step outside the comfortable bounds of her past self? Arriving at the sleek corporate gallery filled with glass and steel, she hesitated at the entrance, heart racing. This wasn't just another day at work, and the stakes felt monumentally higher. This was her stage, her moment to either conceal her vision or unleash it upon the crowd. "Just be yourself," she whispered under her breath, a mantra battling against self-doubt. As she entered, the clamor of conversation washed over her, honeyed voices undercut with sharp criticism. The space felt stifling yet charged with expectation. Henri met her gaze, a reassuring nod bolstering her resolve. But as they approached a group clearly engrossed in business, uncertainty danced in the pit of her stomach. Would they welcome her ideas as they had welcomed her into Henry's orbit? Once introductions were made, silence fell like a heavy blanket. Molly felt the eyes upon her, tracing her outline as if inspecting her worth. It was time to strip away the layers of dependence she had draped upon herself. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. The words flowed, intent punctuating her thoughts, a narrative of potential she had sketchily crafted, now emerging indiscriminately into the shared space. As she spoke of her vision, she felt the protective clutches of fear gradually loosening, sparks of authenticity igniting within. But amidst her fervor, a voice cut through. A skeptical investor leaned forward, arms crossed, a smirk teetering on his lips. And what makes you think your vision can achieve anything substantial? You're just a waitress. What do you truly know about this world? The question sent a jolt through her, a wave of icy reality crashing down, threatening to drown her newfound assertiveness. At that moment, Molly had to heed the echo of her past, a reminder that though the boy whose identity she wrestled with had succumbed to fears, she could not shield herself with those old narratives any longer. She straightened her back, the weight of judgment igniting something primal within her. The moment of truth was at hand, and in that instant, a resolve crystallized within her. This was not about deflecting judgment but about showcasing who she had become, a tapestry of struggles and aspirations that had forged her identity, not simply served as a backdrop. I've lived a life that taught me resilience, understanding, and the art of connection, lessons that usually remain unnoticed in the shadows of luxury, she asserted, finding clarity in her voice. Your opinions don't define my worth. I'm here because I see a future, and I'm committed to paving a way for others, regardless of their background. It's time we challenge those boundaries together. Molly's heart thundered in her chest. Had she truly spoken those words? A profound shift unfurled within her as those around her absorbed her daring proclamation, the electric tension brimming with unvoiced questions. The eyes that hesitated to see her potential now reflected curiosity. Yet beneath that flicker, skepticism lingered. Her journey had only just begun. Could she navigate this treacherous territory, or would her newfound voice fall silent against the winds of doubt? As conversations resumed, the weight of her words spun through the air, the stakes climbing higher than ever. Looking at Henri, she realized the next step felt tenuous yet crucial, a path towards not only self-advocacy but one that could redefine her place in the world. What other hurdles awaited, and would she continue to muster the courage to confront them? The atmosphere buzzed with an energy that swirled around Molly, a delicate tension filling the air, swirling like aspirations caught in crosswinds. As the investors shifted their gazes, curiosity morphing into speculation, she felt the weight of each silent judgment leaning upon her shoulders. It was a weight she would either crumble under or use as a stepping stone to rise. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the conviction that had dared to take root during her talk. The room pulsed with voices, punctuated by the condescending remarks of the skeptical investor, their disbelief not merely directed at her, but symbolizing the barrier she had to break through. "Did you see how they looked at me?" she thought, replaying his smirk like a haunting melody. There was a strange sense of desperation to prove herself tugging at her heart, but this time she couldn't ignore the countering urge to embrace vulnerability instead of retreating into shadows. So what if they view me through the eyes of that stereotype? Molly questioned within herself. I define me. It was a reminder, a renewed affirmation of self-respect. There was a path forward. She needed to acknowledge not just her ambitions but her current reality, woven intricately with the lessons learned from her life behind the diner counter. Let us refocus, she urged internally, shifting her perspective from defense to revealing. She took a tentative step toward the center of the room, standing as if in the spotlight for the first time in her life. As she commanded the semblance of attention, she saw Henry's encouraging smile, a beacon anchoring her. Everyone has a past, she asserted, finding new momentum in her speech. Mine is filled with grit, real-world experience, and an understanding of connection that can't be taught in a boardroom. The responses around her morphed into intrigued murmurs, roping in the initial excitement of her narrative. The skeptical investor, now visibly interested, leaned back slightly. And how do you propose to monetize that understanding? The market doesn't exactly value empathy. His words struck a chord, the familiarity of skepticism mingling with an invigorating clarity. Her previous self might have flinched, offering an apologetic retreat. But Molly was no longer an apology. Empathy can revolutionize the way we do business, she replied, feeling a deep-rooted conviction surge through her. It can drive innovation, build loyalty, and create communities where people and businesses thrive. Each word, rich with conviction, expanded in the air. Investors shifted in their chairs, some nodding, others slow to consider. The atmosphere buzzed, a symphony of unsure enthusiasm flickering through their expressions. But she knew, in that moment, her authenticity was what would ultimately forge connections. These seasoned professionals had come with their own experiences, the polished surface of their sophistication perhaps masking vulnerabilities that resonated with her own. Perhaps it wasn't just about selling an idea, it was about building understanding. As she looked around the room, she could sense a shift acknowledgement building that she had the power to forge. The space no longer felt like a battleground but a canvas on which she could paint her vision. I believe in a future where our human experiences are our greatest assets, she continued. By engaging in our stories, we can develop businesses that reflect the values we hold true. I'm here to push us to remember that what we create goes beyond profit, it's the fulfillment of real needs and wants in our society. With each word, Molly felt the tether to her previous identity stretching gracefully, her voice a bridge from the past to the infinite potential ahead. Life, once a series of challenges looming before her, now expanded like a horizon filled with the colors of possibility. Yet just as a smile began to form in response to her passionate delivery, the bell-tolling urgency rang in her gut. There were still risks strewn before her, years of ingrained doubts unwilling to be easily dismissed. Henri's approval was a comfort, but she needed to own this narrative, bear its weight, and invite it to become part of her story fully. Let us approach this collaboratively, she proposed, casting an invitation into the room. Let us explore how empathy can not only shape our initiative but reshape our market presence. I can lead discussions that weave our experiences into practical solutions. The murmurs crescendoed, some listeners appearing enthusiastic, while others remained hesitant, a balancing act of hope against skepticism. But as rejection hovered, something else began to stir inside her. This wasn't merely about saving face anymore, it was an awakening of all she could become. But deep down, another question began to churn. Was she merely drawn to the opportunity that had once seemed elusive, or was she ready to unravel more profound conflicts within herself as those around her delved deeper into proposals and expectations? As the discussions gained traction, Molly held on to a mixture of buoyancy and trepidation, knowing her true test was no longer out there among investors but inwards, where her next confrontation awaited. What else would she need to confront to fully claim her voice and her vision? Molly's pulse quickened as she navigated the shifting dialogues, her voice shaping the room and her thoughts weaving tighter. It was exhilarating to feel the shift in energy, but beneath her vibrant exterior, the lingering shadows of doubt threatened to dim her burgeoning confidence. She had planted the seeds of a revolutionary idea, yet fear clawed at the edges of her resolve. What if she failed? With every engaging response, Molly attempted to quiet the internal voices questioning her worth. She couldn't allow herself to retreat into the confines of what others thought of her. Instead, an inner dialogue sparked a new realization. The skepticism she faced was a clear reflection of the very challenges she wanted to address through her endeavors. This was not just a presentation, it was a profound confrontation against the industry status quo, a risk steeped in the very essence of her growth. As her thoughts rushed forward, she fixated on her next action. What tactics would she employ that would challenge the investors' perceptions without losing the authenticity she had fought so hard to assert? Let us dive deeper into collaboration, she proposed, anchoring herself against the tide of uncertainty. Imagine a model where consumer behavior is interpreted through emotional analytics, where we understand the heartbeat of our audience, not just their wallets. It's about connecting on a human level. The veil of professionalism began to lift, revealing the raw potential of shared human experiences. One investor raised his hand, skepticism etched on his face, but the ember of curiosity flickered beneath it. And how do you propose to implement such an emotional analytics model within our current frameworks? Molly paused, this question an invitation dangling in front of her. It demanded a deft maneuver, a clear demonstration that her ideas were not mere flights of fancy but grounded in reality. Imagine deploying AI tools that analyze customer interactions, weaving empathy into our algorithms, she responded, feeling momentum building. These tools can capture the unspoken sentiments of our audience, transforming data into actionable insights. Businesses will thrive by embracing empathy as a core driver of innovation. We need to market not just to consumers, but to their feelings, their narratives, and their lived experiences. A collective inhalation in the room underscored her point, the initial uncertainty morphing into a spectrum of contemplative expressions. It was exhilarating and terrifying, the recognition that she was no longer just selling an idea but pitching a paradigm shift. Yet, amid her triumph, a deeper confrontation loomed. Why had she always feared being seen as just a waitress or an outsider in this realm of power? The echoes of her past whispered of self-doubt, taunting her at the fringes of her success. She had a vision, but every step forward demanded an acknowledgement of the scars that had shaped her. Was it time to own those scars completely? Her heart thudded loudly, drawing the attention of investors who were now leaning in, visibly engaged. Would they rally behind a woman who dared to redefine their understanding of business? "I am not asking you to dismiss profit," she asserted, rooting her conviction into the floor beneath her. "Rather, I am asking you to reconsider who we are marketing to and how we can embrace our stories as our greatest strength. Our shared narratives can build trust that translates to loyalty, a currency far more valuable than fleeting transactions." A silent ripple coursed through the room, enraptured by her urgency. Yet, a solitary voice anchored her anxiety. What if this was her moment only to have it melt away in front of her eyes? Just as she contemplated this uncertainty, Henri caught her gaze across the room, his expression a mixture of admiration and concern. The reassurance in his eyes was a lifeline, but it also reinforced the fear of letting him and everyone else down. Her heart raced with a question that threatened to surface, fragile yet firm: was she brave enough to continue pushing forward with her vision, to invite confrontation with her own insecurities along the way? Could she reconcile the pragmatic business strategies with the emotional truths that governed human connection? As a blend of hope and fear settled in her chest, she knew her path was no longer just about the response of these investors, it was about an internal reckoning. A confronting journey lay ahead that would test the very foundations of her aspirations. Could she continue to evolve while standing against an industry tucked deep within its rigid templates? While the discussions were teetering on the edge of breakthrough, Molly took a deep breath, ready to venture deeper into her own story. What awaited her on the other side of this personal and professional reckoning? Molly awakened to a dawn that felt different, alive with opportunity and resolution. The meeting with the investors had challenged her to confront not just industry expectations but her own sense of worth. Empathy was her weapon, and vulnerability had transformed into her shield. Now, it was time to shift from wrestling with self-doubt to embracing the potential that awaited her. Standing in her kitchen, she poured herself a cup of coffee, reminding herself of the courageous woman who had spoken her truth just days before. She had faced the 100 skeptical eyes and emerged not unscathed but enlightened. The room had shifted in energy, and with it, she felt a newfound sense of belonging that didn't just hinge on wealth or reputation. Instead, she existed within the raw tapestry of authentic connections. Every moment since that day sharpened her vision. Henri, thrilled by her passion, encouraged her to pursue the community art initiative she had mentioned. Conversations with him often tangled in rich exchanges about blending life stories into measurable impact. Together, they spoke of workshops designed to cultivate local talent, to break barriers with creative expression instead of financial might. This was her direction, an artistic advocacy fueled by lived experiences. Molly polished her proposal, now fueled with a clarity that shed the residual chains of doubt. Each word felt like a stroke of paint on a canvas, vibrant and filled with life. During her brainstorming sessions with Henri, she had developed a strategy to connect local artists with businesses in need of innovative solutions, offering mutual benefits without compromising authenticity. It was a project that could redefine what it meant to support local communities, and she was ready to share it. As the time approached for her to present her revamped initiative to a new group of investors, the familiar apprehension was eclipsed by an unwavering resolve. She adorned herself in a bright but professional outfit that mirrored her vibrant vision. As she looked at her reflection, she imagined herself stepping beyond the constraints of judgment and expectation, embracing her multifaceted identity. Today would not simply be any presentation, it was her commitment to herself, to her dreams new and bold. After setting foot in the conference room, she noticed a mixture of familiar faces and new participants, investors intrigued by the stir her initial presentation had caused. Henri sat at the back, a grounding force, radiating support. With a deep breath, she stood at the front, heart steady, ready to weave her narrative. "Thank you for joining me today," she began, her voice firm. "Since our last discussion, I've reflected deeply on how we can channel human experiences through art and connection, creating models that resonate with communities." As she laid out her proposal, her authenticity shone brighter than ever. No longer just a waitress with a dream, she articulated her personal story intertwined with societal impact. The room absorbed her passion, progressively softening the air that had once been thick with skepticism. Questions emerged, challenging yet constructive, as she navigated through the intricacies of her ideas with a newfound confidence. When a prominent investor interjected, "Can empathy really drive financial growth?" Molly smiled knowingly. "Absolutely. Empathy fosters loyalty, it creates relationships." Here, in the intersection of art and commerce, we discover that leveraging story over product can redefine consumer markets entirely. The conversation picked up, participants debating the transformative potential of her vision. Some were still hesitant, but there was an unmistakable shift. This time, they were not dismissing her but rather engaging with her ideas. She could feel it. She was no longer just a heart beneath the diner's fluorescent lighting but a formidable player in a field where value transcended traditional boundaries. As the presentation concluded, a palpable buzz of enthusiasm filled the room. Investors exchanged views, raising possibilities not previously entertained. What once seemed an insurmountable chasm between her aspirations and the expectations of others had now become a bridge, illuminating the sheer force of her convictions. In the days that followed, not only did she secure funding for her community art initiative, but she also established a partnership that recognized the need for social responsibility in business. The weight of her journey transformed into a badge of honor, reflecting the deep and personal work it took to forge her path. However, as she looked around at the budding initiative, a new realization washed over her. Personal growth was not merely about achieving external validation, it was also about the quieter moments of self-acceptance. She had conquered her fears not swiftly, but consistently, like a slow spiral of paint layered onto a canvas. Spending time with Henri evolved into the kind of companionship she had desired. They exchanged ideas on art, purpose, and ambition, both equally passionate yet grounded in their realities. The walls that had once divided them eroded into a support system built on understanding. Standing at the forefront of her initiative's launch, Molly gazed upon the diverse community gathered, artists connecting, stories shared, and barriers fluctuating in the pulse of creativity hanging in the vigor of the room. This was her achievement, the culmination of fear transformed into authentic action. "I did it," she whispered to herself, pride swelling, feeling more fulfilled than she had ever anticipated. Yet she knew the journey was far from complete. It merely marked the beginning of another chapter, where she welcomed every challenge. With a resolute heart, she took a deep breath, determined to carve out spaces for every artist who aimed to redefine their narrative, just as she had done. The world wasn't a set construct, it was an endless landscape of possibilities, waiting to be painted with the experiences lived. The future promised art and connection, layered with both challenge and promise. Seeking authenticity was no longer just a personal endeavor, it was an anchor for the communities she would cultivate. And at that moment, she realized, this was the embodiment of who she truly was: a creator, an artist, and a passionate advocate ready to reshape narratives through connection. Don't delay, the moment for transformation is now. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you to conquer your own doubts and rise to your true potential. Leave a like now to support the content that fosters courage and personal growth. Comment your reactions and theories about Molly's journey and share your own stories of overcoming negativity. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of individual transformation. This is the moment to show your support for the stories that change lives.